Welcome in another episode of GPTalks. In this series, I'm talking about immigration. And thus far, I did not talk about money at all. I gave you a lot of advice on how to prepare, how to move, how to travel, how to establish yourself right after you land in a new country. But I did not talk about money whatsoever. First of all, I would like to make a disclaimer. I'm recording this video on September 4th, 2016, and the content of that video is going to get outdated pretty much within a year from its being released. But what's important is the way you prepare to put money together to pay for all the fees and costs related to moving to a new country. The other thing is that the cost can go only up, so treat this video as your baseline. As I said in one of my previous videos, the way I got to Canada was via a working holiday visa. At the time I got it, and I believe the price is still the same, it was $150 for one person. So for me and my wife, we had to pay $300. On top of that, we needed a lot of translations for our documents. Therefore, we paid around $500 in total just to get visas. Once we landed in Canada, we started to apply for the permanent residence status. And the way we did that was through a BCPNP, which stands for British Columbia Province Nominee Program. It's one of those provincial programs that allows you to ask the local government for some help in becoming a permanent resident. Different provinces are doing it differently, but in BC the way it works is you had to establish yourself and show to the local government that you're not going to go immediately on welfare, that you will be able to find a job, that you will be able to have a place to live. And you have to sign a document saying that after you receive a permanent resident status, you live in British Columbia for 5 years. Now, BCPNP program cost $550 per person. So for me and my wife, that was $1,100. Unfortunately, the entire process takes quite a while. I was lucky mine was short, but typically it takes up to a year or even longer. The thing is, because it took so long, I had to extend my work permit. Now, the work permit extension is highly dependent on the type of work permit you have. I had to pay $230. So for me and my wife, $460. But some of the work permits will be expensive and they will cost around $690 per person. So make sure you know exactly what kind of fee to pay. Once we got the nomination, because this is how the letter from the province is called, we applied for the permanent resident status. And that's another $550 per person of 22 years of age or above. As far as I know, right now the cost for anybody below 22 years of age is $150. So again, for myself and my wife, that's another $1,100. We're close now to $3,000 for BCPNP Province Nominee Program, for permanent residency, and for initial visa and the visa extension, $3,000. On top of that, you need to add the cost of all the documents that will be necessary for your applications. All your birth certificates, marriage certificates, diplomas, other documents that you might be asked to provide. Remember that all of them will have to be translated and in some cases certified by your local government. Therefore, add that cost to the initial fees that you pay to apply. So that is the cost of getting into Canada and being allowed to stay and work here legally. Now let's talk about some other costs that you will have right after you land, and you will have to put money aside in order for you to even start your life on immigration. The first cost is going to be related to the banking system. You see, Canadian government is regulating banks heavily, and the banks are not allowed to take too much risk. So they developed a lot of rules that governs how you can get, for instance, a credit card. This is going to be different for different countries, and there are certain rules that are not necessarily written in their FAQs on their website. For instance, unfortunately for people from Russia, they will have lots of trouble getting a credit card. And that is because for a very long time it was very easy for everybody to get a credit card. And unfortunately, there was a lot of immigrants from Russia who committed fraud. I'm not saying that Russian people are at fault over here, but this is just a stereotype that banks developed. Therefore, it's very hard for them to get a credit card. You will not find this in FAQs or any manuals, but unfortunately this is what's happening. Now, one important thing here to remember is that no matter from which country you are, banks will like to have some security against your credit card. So what they're going to do is ask you to put $1,000 on a very low interest investing account, which is just a security for your credit card. That $1,000 is going to be sitting on that account for up to 3 years or until you cancel the card. And this is just their security. Each time if you will not be able to pay your credit card and they will have to force you to close the account, they're going to take the money from that account to pay off the credit card. You ask, why $1,000? Most likely your first credit card here is going to be limited to $1,000. So they take security up to your limit. So the minute you enter the bank to get yourself a credit card, which you will need for many reasons, you will have to leave at least $1,000 in a bank. Now you will ask, why do I need a credit card? In order for you to rent an apartment or rent a car or get an internet provider to connect you with internet at your new apartment, what they do over here is something called a credit check. And it is going to be basically them asking the Visa or other credit providers to say whether you had any issues paying off any bills that you had in the past. And that credit rating is something very important that you have to start building once you move to Canada. Now, in order for you to go through credit check, you need to have a credit card. That's why it's so important to get the credit card immediately after you land. When you will be applying to get your apartment, what's going to happen is you have to fill out a form with your landlord and provide them with your credit card number. They're going to then perform a credit check. It is not for every single apartment, and the lower the price, typically the requirements are lower, but also the lower the quality. Now, another thing to remember is that apartments and rental in Canada, in Vancouver especially, is very expensive. I guess all of those big cities like Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, they are going to be expensive, and city centers are going to be just ridiculously expensive. I will run you through a typical scenario. You get to know the landlord and they will show you the apartment. If you like it, they will tell you the price for it. And for a sake of discussion, let's say it's going to be $1,000, which, by the way, for Vancouver, it's super cheap, and I don't think you'll be able to find anything that cheap. But maybe in Burnaby or New Westminster or Port Coquitlam or Coquitlam, you'll be able to find an apartment for $1,000. Typically, they will ask you to pay upfront for the first and the last month of your lease. You say how they can charge for the last month. We don't know what the last month is. Well, typically they just assume that at some point you're going to move out, therefore there will be a last month of your lease and it's going to be prepaid for you or by you. So the first day you will have to pay $2,000 to even start living in this apartment. On top of that, they will ask for half of the rent for a full month as a security deposit, which in our case is going to be $500. So the very first day, before you even get the keys to your apartment, you will have to write a check for $2,500. That's a lot of money, and you have to remember to bring that money with you when you cross the border. You have to also remember that there is a limit how much you can bring without the tax that is typically put on any amount above $10,000. So let's sum everything up. I paid almost $3,000 in fees. I paid $1,000 in security, and I paid almost $2,500 for the rental of the apartment. The good news is you don't need all of that money right at the time when you land in the new country. The process of applying for the PR status took over a year, and all the fees that I paid over a course of a year, which means you have the time to earn that money and put it on the side so you can then pay those fees. So it is not that bad that you have to bring around $7,000, maybe even $10,000 with you, which I know is very hard to put aside if you don't live in Canada. But be aware of the costs that are related to moving to the new country and the money that you have to bring with you to even start your life here. In my next video, I'm going to focus on the cost of living in Canada. I will cover things like groceries, taxes, bills, and other things that you will have to pay on a monthly basis. But for now, that's it. Thank you for watching. Click like if you like this video, comment if you have anything you want to share with me, and click subscribe to get informed about new videos coming out. Thanks and take care.